I went through a very difficult breakup. So I was 25, good job, just won a bodybuilding show, sports car, model girlfriend, new apartment, everything quote unquote that you could ever want. My girlfriend ended up leaving me because I was a very insecure, shelled up human being. Probably the best way to put it is I was just shelled up. I was scared of everything. And she left me. And I remember one of the most difficult questions I ever asked myself was, why would anybody want to be in a relationship with me? And the answer, I didn't really have an answer. And that's where I started, is like, well, okay, that's something
That
for sure.
sucks, but what can we do with
That sucks. Yeah. But I think it's one of those things of you just have to figure out what the next layer is for you. I loved Joe Rogan in the beginning. That's where I started this journey. That's why I'm a podcaster. Joe Rogan is the reason. I remember he had a conversation with his buddy, Duncan Trussell, and they were talking about why more people aren't happy. And I remember for some reason that I broke through a layer, and I was like, wait, that's such an interesting point. If an alien came down and said, Terry, do you like your job? And you said no, the alien would be like, well, why do you do it every day? For some reason, it landed that day, and I started looking at things differently. And then it was like, I want to start having deep conversations with people about stuff like this. That was the layer. Yeah. And then from there, you see things a little bit differently. So I remember saying this to a group of my friends, and I got laughed at. I said, you know what's weird to think of? And I don't know if you ever do this. I'm driving down the highway. I look up into the sky, and I realize that we are on a rock spinning through space. And if gravity decides to take a day off, we're all dead. And I got laughed at. And they're like, no, I don't think about that. Well, I'm a deeper thinker. I'm most likely a deeper thinker than you are. That's okay. That was another thing. But it all started with a simple, it's like when a string gets pulled on a shirt. It's just a little bit at first. It just loosens up. It's a little bit. It's a little bit. It's a little bit. So I think, yeah, just starting the process is really the name of the game, because once you start to see one thing differently, theoretically you see everything differently. A little bit.
I say this sometimes on the show. There's a leap of faith in that, though, right? Of like, for people listening who maybe haven't started that journey yet, they haven't started to pull that thread. Maybe they're in a place you were, or I was in the past, where they feel like, I got nothing here. There's no self-worth involved here. To start to go on that journey, there's almost a leap of faith, because it may be ugly at first. When you ask that question of why would somebody want to be in a relationship with me, probably things got even worse in that moment than they were before. And I think for a lot of people, they think, I don't want it to be worse, and I'm not sure that it's going to be better. I'm not convinced that it will be. And that's a big question, I think, fundamentally for people, is like, how do they get over it? And maybe the answer is as simple as like, you got to take that leap of faith. You got to just take action. You got to trust from people you've heard of that have done it, that have made it work. But I find often, I'm curious what you found with the work that you do. How do you get people over that hump to take that first leap when they're not sure that it's actually going to pay out, and they think it may be more risk than it is a reward?
It is a $1 billion question. Humans must have 3 beliefs in order to take a new action. They must believe it is humanly possible. They must believe it is possible for them. And probably the biggest one that people struggle with, they must believe it's worth it. It will be worth it. A couple of ways. One, you tell them about your journey and you say, results are not typical, but this is what I experienced, and I'm very grateful I did. Or you say, if you did go on this journey, what would make it worth it to you? What is a result that you think you could get in the future, or that you long for in the future, that would make all of this worth it? Is it your dream relationship? Okay, here's how that connects. Is it becoming financially free? Well, you're never going to become financially free if you don't understand the money blocks that you have from your childhood. It really very much is. It's so when you hear people talk, oftentimes they're doing this thing where when they tell the story of where they used to be, that's the hell if you don't. When they tell you the story of where they are today, that's the heaven if you do. It's kind of that of, well, in 5 years, if you don't explore yourself, where do you really see yourself being? I mean, do you think it's going to be a lot different than it is today? Probably not, unless you get lucky. But if you do work on yourself, there's no reason you can't attract your dream partner. There's no reason you can't become financially free. There's no reason you cannot improve in fitness or whatever it is. But it all starts from the beliefs stemming, or from the results stemming from the beliefs that you have. So I think it's kind of a conversation like this with a deeper understanding. Now, here's the problem. You can only have so many of those conversations with people. On a podcast episode, it's very hard to get somebody to take a new action, because I don't know specifically what they're going through. I don't know specifically what words they resonate with. So behind the scenes, it's a lot easier because you can pull certain strings. But I think you have to paint a picture of a brighter future and say, from my experience, this is what I've seen. This is what's worked for me. Take it if you'd like. If not, maybe it's not aligned, but I do believe this would be beneficial. It's a conversation, really. I think that's what it is at the end of the day. It's just a real, authentic, heart-driven, but no BS conversation.
So let's test that. Let's make that real for a second, to the extent, because I often look for opportunities to empathize in all ways, right? If you try and think back to whatever it was, 10, 15 years ago, whatever, when you were in that place where you said you were kind of just a shell of a person afraid of everything, if you couldn't empathize and go back to that point, if you had that conversation, the you now had a conversation with the you then and tried to articulate these points before you had that breakup, before that pain forced you into it, is there a way in which you could have heard it? Is there a way in which you could have gotten to this point without having to go through that pain first?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think humans are motivated by pain. It's necessity. I mean, the necessity was great enough for me to face myself. It's almost like the pain you go through is going to determine how much pain you're willing to continue to go through. Kind of, in a way. We call it the pain-pleasure pendulum. So I was sitting on the edge of a bed suicidal after I made a bunch of money at my job, and I was miserable and I didn't want to do what I was doing anymore. I was willing to take a large leap and quit my job and go full-time into podcasting. But if I just had a bad day at work, the odds of me having enough motivation, necessity, quote unquote, to do that weren't great enough. So I think this is why, and you'll see a lot of quotes, rock bottom is a great building point, or whatever it is, a good place to build a new foundation. In theory, it is, because there's really nowhere else to go from there. So I don't know. I think I needed those experiences because it forced me to learn as much about myself as possible. But what I will say is my goals also forced me to continue to learn more about myself. That's a whole nother piece. Is my goal is to be the most humble version of myself. My goal, my mission statement that I say to myself is, my goal is to be the most extraordinary version of Kevin humanly possible, but never to forget what it was like not to be.